Biden honors 12 heroes of January 6 on its 2-year anniversary. Biden announces steps for migrants seeking to cross into U.S. UN passes resolution to seek ICJ's opinion on Israel's occupation of Palestine. Turkey won't extradite Uyghurs to China, foreign minister says. Oxford study warns extreme heat and drought to hit 90% of world population. Cellular glue heals wounds and potentially regrows nerves and tissues. From Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Saamiyah Syed. Our top story tonight, U.S. President Joe Biden honored 12 people who made exemplary contributions to democracy during the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. Biden hosted the White House ceremony Friday for law enforcement officers injured during the attack, for election workers, as well as state and local officials. They all received the Presidential Citizens Medal and were honored for demonstrating courage and selflessness during a moment of peril for the nation. The awardees included former Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who received it posthumously. Sicknick lost his life in the wake of the insurrection. The Presidential Citizens Medal was established by former President Richard Nixon in 1969. We have a segment on this topic coming up, so keep watching Muslim News. U.S. President Joe Biden announced steps on Thursday to curb migrant crossings into the country. He urged those who are coming in to stay where they are currently. Biden said through a parole program, migrants from Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Haiti could seek entry into the United States. Through the program, each migrant must have what he called a law sponsor in the U.S. who agrees to sponsor them to get here. Migrants must also undergo rigorous background checks and apply from outside the United States. Biden said migrants can apply for asylum through the Customs and Border Protection One app. If approved, they can get to the U.S. and work for 2 years. Those who are denied or attempt to unlawfully cross into the U.S. would be returned to Mexico. The Twitter files release of internal company documents and messages has drawn widespread media coverage. After billionaire Elon Musk bought Twitter, he promised he would lift the corporate veil on allegedly ideologically motivated censorship. The first set of the Twitter files was released last December. They detailed Twitter's decision to restrict an October 2020 New York Post story on the laptop of Hunter Biden, the son of U.S. President Joe Biden. Independent journalist Matt Taibbi posted multiple tweets focused on Twitter staff discussions about censoring the laptop controversy story. Taibbi said he had received thousands of internal documents from Twitter sources pointing to the story's suppression. The company controversially blocked people from tweeting and direct messaging about the story, documents show. Twitter and Facebook reportedly took major steps to limit the spread of the article. More than 90% of the global population is projected to suffer the consequences of global warming in the coming decades, according to new research. The study published Thursday in Nature Sustainability shows interlinked extreme heat and drought events are growing in intensity and frequency. Meanwhile, world leaders have failed to adequately slash planet-heating fossil fuel pollution, research shows. Compound drought heat wave events are one of the worst climatic stressors for global sustainable development, the study shows. Their physical mechanisms and impacts on socio-ecosystem productivity remain poorly understood, it reports. 9 scholars at universities in China, the US, the United Kingdom, and Japan found the frequency of such extreme events is projected to increase tenfold globally. It is expected to have a disproportionate negative impact on vegetation and socioeconomic productivity by the late 21st century. A Minnesota University art history instructor who showed a 14th century painting depicting the Prophet Muhammad's peace be upon him cult prophecy has been dismissed. The move comes amid controversy over Islamic representational art, academic freedom, and campus speech debates. In October, the instructor, whose name has not been publicly shared, was teaching an online global art history class at Hamline University. The school is a United Methodist affiliated school in St. Paul. The teacher gave students written and verbal notifications that the image would be shown and allowed students not to participate. A video recording of the class was obtained by the student newspaper, The Oracle. One of the students, who is also the president of the Muslim Students Association, complained to the administration. The student said the image was offensive and disrespectful to Muslims. Muslims believe Islam prohibits figural representations of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The university responded in an email to students condemning the instructor's decision as undeniably inconsiderate, disrespectful, and Islamophobic. The instructor's contract was not renewed. The County of Los Angeles on Tuesday announced it will buy back Bruce's Beach, a waterfront property seized from a Black family in the 1920s. The Bruce family decided to sell the property back to the county for $20 million. The money was paid to Willa and Charles Bruce's living descendants roughly 100 years later. On June 28th last year, the county announced the property would be returned to the Bruce family as the legal heirs. Janice Hahn, supervisor of the 4th District, said she hopes governments across the country will follow this model of reparations. The county's statement acknowledged the systemic racial injustice suffered by the Bruce family. The family was denied decades of intergenerational wealth because of the government's seizure, the statement read. News on cellular glue healing wounds by potentially regrowing nerves comes with details after the break, so stay tuned and we will be right back after these messages. Welcome back. University of California, San Francisco researchers have engineered molecules that act like a cellular glue for direct bonding of tissues. The UCSF team produced customized adhesion molecules which bound select cells in a predictable manner. It gives scientists control of the body's regenerative potential. Wendell Lim, a senior author and director of UCSF's Cell Design Institute, said this opens the door to building novel structures like tissues and organs. Adhesive molecules can be found throughout the human body. They create communicative bonds and immune pathways between tens of trillions of cells. Manipulating them has never been accomplished. Cellular bonding creates the characteristics of the structure they create. Tighter bonds form complex, solid organs such as the liver or lungs. Looser bonds permit structures such as immune molecules that fight disease. A notable Iranian actress arrested on charges of spreading falsehoods last month has been released on bail, local media reports. Taraneh Ali Dosti, the star of Ashghar Farhadi's Oscar-winning film The Salesman, was jailed December 17th after she backed nationwide protests. Ali Dosti was released on bail Wednesday, according to Iran's ISNA news agency. Her mother, Nadira Hakim Ilahi, also announced her imminent release on Instagram. Protests erupted in September after the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in the custody of Iran's morality police. Ali Dosti was arrested after she expressed solidarity with the first man executed for crimes allegedly committed during those protests in an Instagram post. Ali Dosti's Instagram account, which had 8 million followers, has been suspended. She was among several Iranian celebrities who showed support for the protests. After Amini's death, Iran has seen its biggest protests since its 1979 revolution. Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu said his country will not give in to pressure from China to extradite Uyghurs with Turkish citizenship. Çavuşoğlu said Turkish-Chinese ties have suffered as a result. Turkey is among one of the most hospitable countries to Uyghurs, with whom Turks share ethnic, religious, and linguistic connections. Roughly 50,000 Uyghurs live in Turkey, forming the largest Uyghur diaspora outside Central Asia. The Turkish government has offered Uyghurs a safe place to live outside of China's northwestern East Turkestan region, which the Chinese government calls Xinjiang. In China, Uyghurs face persecution and are subject to human rights violations. In recent years, the Turkish government has been accused of deporting Uyghur dissidents to China via third countries next to East Turkestan. Çavuşoğlu said those reports were total lies. A report by former UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet says serious human rights violations have been committed against Uyghurs in China. Bachelet's report accuses China of international crimes and crimes against humanity under the guise of counter-extremism strategies. Muslims in Cambodia are facing a new challenge, a growing number of products or restaurants using fake halal logos. In Cambodia, practicing Muslims make up around 2% of the 16 million population. They already have a hard time finding restaurants selling halal food due to a shortage of certified suppliers. Many non-halal restaurants are selling food they claim is halal to Muslim consumers. A large number of Cambodian Muslim community members have reported that these restaurants or eateries post a halal logo but have no certification. Many of these businesses operate in areas where Muslims live, and people are being deceived by some vendors who label products as halal. The Commission for Examination of Halal Products in Cambodia is responsible for approving the certification of halal products. Thorn Sarin, the Commission's deputy head of administration, said people committing these crimes are simply prioritizing profit over consumers' needs and wishes. Artist Humaira Abid's latest Fight Like a Girl exhibit challenges gender stereotypes regarding Muslim women. It comes amid protests by women in Iran and Afghanistan for their rights to freedom in education. For decades, Abid has used her art to explore taboos, defy gender stereotypes, and educate the public about women refugees and social injustice. Abid was born and raised in Pakistan, but is now based in Seattle. Her work primarily focuses on the challenges that women in South Asia and the Middle East face. She uses miniature paintings and wood carvings to highlight issues such as reproductive health, political instability, discrimination, and abuse. The Fight Like a Girl exhibition was on display at the Greg Kucera Gallery in Seattle through October. Her art has referenced Saudi Arabia's ban on women motorists and a lesser-known law barring women from using eye makeup or having tempting eyes. The UN General Assembly on Saturday passed a resolution seeking the International Court of Justice's opinion on Israel's illegal occupation of Palestinian territories. The resolution was backed by 87 UN General Assembly members and was opposed by 26 members with 53 abstentions. It calls on the court to determine the legal consequences arising from the ongoing violation by Israel of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. It also asks the ICJ to review Israel's measures aimed at altering the demographic composition, character, and status of the Holy City of Jerusalem. As well, it calls on the UN Secretary General to present a report on the implementation of the resolution in the upcoming General Assembly session in September 2023. Riyad Mansour, Palestinian representative to the UN, hailed the countries undeterred by threats and pressure and voted in favor of the resolution. Around 666,000 settlers live in 145 settlements and 140 random outposts not licensed by the Israeli government in the occupied West Bank. That includes East Jerusalem, according to the Israeli Peace Now NGO. Coming up after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we will be right back after these messages. Welcome back. To discuss the second anniversary of the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Saamiyah. January 6th anniversary, second anniversary that is here. President Biden plans to have a ceremony in Washington, D.C. in White House, giving award to 12 people who are election worker or work on saving lives on January 6th, 2021. But none of that is in headlines. None of that, I don't see any other news about somebody marking the anniversary of January 6th or some great discussion about all of that. Republicans are still struggling to find a speaker for themselves, but in this meantime, they were able to remove metal detectors from the Congress. We have Daryl Johnson with us to discuss these issues about January 6th and right-wing extremism. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you.
Daryl Johnson is former senior analyst at the Department of Homeland Security. He's also the author of Hateland, a long, hard look at America's extremist heart. Do you think, Daryl, another January 6th is possible?
Well, as you've seen since January 6th, the FBI and Justice Department have launched a massive investigation into the violence of that day. We've had over 900 people arrested to date, and they're still looking for more. So this has had somewhat of a deterrent effect. It's caused a lot of these groups to operate underground, which is equally concerning because we don't know what these people are chatting about, what they're plotting to do next. So just know that despite the Biden administration's attempt to send out this national strategy to combat domestic terrorism, this threat still remains a national security concern.
Do you think our law enforcement is this time ready if there is a need for support to the Capitol Police? Is the National Guard are ready? Have they done any rehearsals? Are the military willing to listen this time?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it took the events of January 6, 2020 to cause our legislators, law enforcement to finally recognize this threat for what it is. And so that was a lesson learned. And so this next go around, I think they'll be much more prepared because their mindset now realizes the full totality of this threat.
Tell me this. I don't see, as I mentioned, any news items other than President Biden and White House about the January 6th anniversary. Are people trying hard to forget about it? Why media is not paying attention to that?
Yeah, I can't answer why the media isn't paying attention to it. I mean, obviously, people in my line of work are aware of the anniversary date. And so there's been, quite a bit of law enforcement operations against these right-wing extremists since the January 6th insurrection. So hopefully, like I said, that's had a deterrent effect. But make no mistake, these groups still are operating underground as well as above ground. And we do see arrests and plots and people with, weapons and ammunition being arrested practically every month.
So you mentioned it is difficult now to know since these people are hiding and using different mechanism. What mechanism are they using to communicate which government cannot look into?
Yeah, so as the social media platforms like Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and others have taken a crackdown on these groups and deplatforming them, some of them have migrated to other types of social media like 4chan and 8chan, and they even have their own types of communication networks that they've established themselves. So it's hard to monitor. And again, we're talking about people's freedom of speech, even though it's hateful and vile and anti-government. Law enforcement can't scrutinize that activity until it becomes criminal or threatening in nature.
Well, when it comes to other types of extremism connected overseas, we're watching speech and conversation and tracking that, or sometime entrapping people. Is any of that happening in this domestic terrorism situation?
Yes, so you point out a very good point, and that is people that have ties to international terrorist groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS, they lose some of their civil protections because they're linked to a designated foreign terrorist group. There is no list of domestic terrorist groups. And so it's much harder to delineate which people are endorsing violence or capable of carrying out violence and those who are just, talking heated rhetoric. And so there's a delicate balance. And because of the strategy these domestic terrorists use, it makes it more difficult for the federal government, law enforcement, the Justice Department to look at the extremist chatter. And so that's why we have to rely on the private citizenry as well as private industry to, if you see something, say something. If you see something suspicious or you see something that doesn't look quite right, report that to the authorities. A classic example just happened last month where we had a young man showing up at a gun range dressed all in black, wearing a Kevlar military helmet, body armor, and was practicing speed loading and fast shooting. He was arrested on weapons violations, and they found out that he was actually plotting a mass shooting. So it was the owner of that gun range who noticed these odd behaviors that reported it to the FBI, and they were able to look into it and prevent an attack.
Now, private entities like yours, are they being engaged or in conversation with the federal government when it comes to right-wing extremism?
Yeah, the federal government relies on, a whole wide range of contacts, both in private industry, faith-based organizations, civil rights organizations, these social media companies. So it's a wide network that they have to depend upon, build relationships of trust so that they can kind of get a holistic approach, looking at different people's perspectives as well as the analytical threat assessments that each party brings to the table.
Do you think Department of Justice has done enough so their whatever charges and convictions they're getting will serve as a deterrent?
Well, they're taking a good step, but I'm afraid that some of these sentences aren't as harsh as they should be. So that may serve as a, kind of a, sign that the government lacks the willpower to put these people in jail for a long time. But I do applaud those efforts. We've still got a lot of work to do. By no means is this threat mitigated. So we're going to be looking at this threat for the next few years past the 2024 election and beyond. So it's very important to remain vigilant and to continue to pull the resources together so that we can all combat this threat.
In a new Congress, Republicans have moved metal detectors. Do you think they will remain as sensitive to the security of congressperson? I mean, congressperson and senators, some of them were just a few feet away on January 6th, 2021. Do you think they will remain as concerned as the earlier, in Pelosi regime?
Well, the Republicans in particular, I think, bear responsibility for identifying, calling out this threat. I was a registered Republican for a very long time, and I've, had the courage to come out and talk about this threat and call it out for what it is. We do have some members in Congress that are Republicans who are doing this, but I'm afraid there's many others that are actually coddling these groups and kind of playing into their conspiracy theories and, some of the rhetoric that they have. And so, the extremists, when they see that, they feel that they have the political support in Washington, and they feel that this is a more permissive environment for them to operate. So it's very important that both Democrats and in particular Republicans identify this threat and call it out for the violence that it's been linked to, and don't try to dismiss it as something, that minimizes the threat, like it's a crazed gunman or someone snapping or the person's mentally ill or it's just a hate crime. If there's ideology that motivated the violence, it's terrorism, and we need to start calling it terrorism.
Do you think the GOP speaker, whoever that is, might be willing to openly condemn what happened January 6th?
I hope so. That's what it's going to take. Republican leadership, calling out the threat, identifying it, and condemning it.
Well, at this moment, there seems to be no plan in this chaotic situation at the House that how they intend to mark January 6th, which is just a few hours away.
Yeah, we had all these hearings about the January 6th insurrection. A lot of information has come out from that, and hopefully when they release the final report, we'll learn even more about it.
Thank you so much, Daryl Johnson, for your time. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Back to you, Saamiyah.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.